Mission Impossible, movies that you may chalk up as being your dad or uncle's favorite franchise. Well, guess what, brother? It's also mine. It's not. But I have to say that I've found comfort in knowing that throughout my 21 years of life, Tom Cruise was out there almost killing himself in the coolest way he could think of for nothing more than the love of the game. And now, with the release of The Final Reckoning, they're done. Allegedly. And what better time than to slap them in a ranked order and look back at one of the best action franchises of all time. Now, I will also be ranking these at the end through some very arbitrary criteria to help spice things up a bit. Obviously, the stunts, a staple of the franchise that I think in a way dictate the intrigue of each individual film, but it's kinda hard to rank them on that because some of these don't really have any crazy stunts. So the real curve is the hair, baby. Oh, you didn't think the story would be part of it, did you? We don't watch these for the plot. Also, spoilers for the franchise that's older than me, with the exclusion of The Final Reckoning. Go watch it. So with that out of the way, let's start with Mission Impossible. What a weird thing to look back on. This movie can definitely be described as the one from the 90s, but it actually holds up pretty well. Mostly holds up pretty well. In a weird way, this movie has elements that I really wish were used more in the others. You see, this one was directed by Brian De Palma, a guy who knows his way around paranoia and sweaty people. I think a key to a good action thriller is how palpable the tension holds up on a rewatch, and I'm not surprised that he pulled it off. The movie is a really good jumping off point for this new era of the franchise. Oh, what new era, you say? Well, this franchise isn't just 8 movies. It's 8 movies and a show, motherfucker. And from the opening, we get to see a big budget expansion on the core elements of the show, espionage that's super fun, maybe a little goofy, and a cast of characters that are super likable. Man, I can't wait to see what Emilio Estevez does, but he's dead. They all die. Buckle up. This is not your grandpa's Mission Impossible. We're in cruise control now. So my dad would do this thing when I was getting into movies where he would watch me react to crazy twists with the most devious grin known to man. When he heard me watching The Sixth Sense in my room, he made me watch the ending in the living room so he could see my reaction to it. And he did the same thing with the opening of this movie, and I was genuinely floored. But though I really like this first one, I do think it's kinda stupid at the same time. There are some incredible scenes like the Langley heist, obviously the most iconic scene in the movie, but you also have a scene where Tom Cruise is getting his shit rocked by a 54-year-old John Voight, or even funnier, where Ethan Hunt has to find an arms dealer known only as Max, so he immediately decides to go to Max.com. And when that doesn't work, he goes to a Book of Job discussion site. Truly amazing stuff. But I understand that some of that is just how this movie aged, so I can't really blame him for not knowing how the internet worked at the time. But again, I'll give credit where it's due. There really isn't anything overtly wrong with this movie. If anything, it's kinda just a regular spy movie at its worst. And anytime it's not working, we'll see stuff like Ethan using some spy kid's ass explosive gum to blow up a window when talking to his boss. The franchise definitely found its footing around the 4th movie, which is a more noticeable issue for the next one, so they get a pass here. This feels so far removed from the rest, but in its defense, they just didn't know what this movie would spawn. And as a fan of De Palma, I look at this more as the De Palma spy thriller with Tom Cruise than an installment in an 8-movie franchise, which was basically unheard of at the time unless you were James Bond, Star Trek, or fucking Dracula.
I'm moving different. This shit ain't nothing to me, man. I'm a dog.
And I think it's safe to say that Ethan Hunt is not quite as strong here as he is in future installments, but how Cruise plays him really makes it feel like this is the most fucked this guy has ever been until now, and it's pretty cool. I also love Luther, a true staple of the series, and one of my favorite parts of rewatching these is seeing him evolve from a cyber criminal to the chillest dude around. Luther gets a 10 out of 10 going forward, but outside of them, we'll see another issue that these tend to have, and it's a problem with the characters. Outside of the main goons, almost every supporting character or new member of the team is a little lame. Just a little bit. John Reno is not doing a bad job, but this is a character that's in like every action movie. He's literally just Alfred Molina's character from Raiders, but stretched out through the whole movie. The same can be said about Claire, who really doesn't bring much to the table. But I will say that I think the villain is pretty effective. The main character of the show being the twist bad guy who's tired of saving the world without any recognition or equal compensation is the perfect choice for the direction of the movie. But I don't want to praise the character because John Voight is more evil in real life than he is in the movie, and I hate him. The film is also noticeably missing stunts, which are like the thing in the latest ones. Like here, he runs away from water. There's the wire thing, which is sick as hell. I just think I have Tom Cruise brain rot because comparatively, it's not as crazy. And the hair. Probably his worst hair. He looks like his mom took him to Supercuts for school pictures on Monday.
I'll be crying if I look like that too, bro. That's fucked up what they be doing to y'all.
So the first Mission Impossible gets an 8 out of 10 with a little heart. I love it. You know, I remember these early movies being a lot more cheesy and outdated. I guess I just remembered them wrong. What the fuck is this? MI2 is definitely a choice, and it's often regarded as the worst one. And yeah, it is. Brian De Palma didn't come back to direct because he said one of these is enough, and I can only imagine how right he felt when this was released. So they decided that legendary Hong Kong action director John Woo would take his place, and this is exactly how I imagine that conversation went. Hey Tom, did you see Face Off with Nick Cage and John Travolta? Yeah, you know, they wore each other's faces in that movie. And we wear people's faces in our movie. Bring him to me. And don't get me wrong, John Woo is a very talented individual, but if I showed you this and told you that it was directed by the same guy that partially inspired The Matrix, you wouldn't believe me at all. But the direction is absolutely not the main issue with this film, so it's really upsetting that out of all the directors in the series, Woo was the only one not asked to return for a sequel. Kinda messed up, man. And with all that being said, I still kinda love this movie. This one may have the most effective opening because it shows you that this has potential to be equally cool and stupid. A rocket launcher that shoots sunglasses? Alright. In this film, Thomas is simply playing a different character. I don't know who this is, where he came from, or where he went after, because this is an MI2 exclusive interpretation of the character. And the biggest failing for me, again, is not John Woo's direction. Like, yeah, it's a little goofy, but the last one had exploding gum and lines like this.
Hasta lasagna, don't get any on you.
The movies are never not goofy, even now. My problem with it is that it seems like it's trying to be so many things that it forgets to be a Mission Impossible movie? There is no tension at any given moment, and instead we get an absurd amount of sick slow-mo and kicks.
I think we have too many kicks in the movie, Tom. I mean, I never say to Woo's face, but I think you got, like how many times can we look at you kicking a guy and then getting kicked in the face? You know what? Kick. Let's call it, let's call it kicking impossible.
I haven't been doing this whole YouTube thing for that long, but I feel like you should know that slow motion is the bane of my existence. Well, I mean, he did get him, didn't he? This movie also started the early trend of Mission Impossible not being great with female characters. When we're introduced to Tandy Newton, we're told that she's a world-renowned thief who can steal anything. Hey, that could be pretty cool. So what does she bring to the story? Sexist remarks from Anthony Hopkins.
She's got no training for this kind of thing. But to go to bed with a man and lie to him, she's a woman. She's got all the training she needs.
Dude, what the fuck? It takes them a remarkably long time to have female characters who are either competently written or make sense to be here for more than one movie, and unfortunately, Tandy Newton is just the hot lady that the good guy falls for, but the bad guy wants her back because they were like dating or something. And I don't know, man. I don't think this movie needed a love triangle. But again, this movie has a pretty good villain, and as far as I know, Dougray Scott doesn't suck. I think. Here, Ethan Hunt is tasked with taking down a former IMF agent who's gone rogue. Again. But like, rogue is an evil, because Ethan literally goes rogue in every other movie. Except this one. Curious. But I actually really like the idea of a bizarro Ethan Hunt, especially in a movie this dumb. I mean, come on, man. I also really like that Luther gets a little more to do than just being the guy in the chair. He has a little physical role in the final set piece, and I think that's cute. Great shot, Luthie. And while I'm on the topic, this movie is really bland until it just decides to be sick as hell. The final climax of the movie is so unironically entertaining that it saves the rest of it from being totally bad. And the stunts all around are an improvement from the first. But then it has to remind you that this movie kinda sucks when Ethan kicks a gun out of the sand to shoot Dougray Scott. I really like when these movies do something insane straight out of the gate, and the rock climbing scene looks amazing. But again, sunglasses in a rocket. The knife stunt still makes me tense up every time I see it, and the motorcycle work is truly amazing. Yeah, say what you will, but this movie did kind of set the precedent for being the premier stunt franchise. But weirdly enough, I think that there are two things about this movie that are better than the actual movie. One is Dougray Scott's stupid full denim suit. The fact that the tie is also denim kind of makes me come back around to it. I have to appreciate the dedication. The second is that this thing is Fun Fact City. Ian McKellen was originally offered Anthony Hopkins' role, but he ended up turning it down. Production ended up running way over schedule, and if he would have accepted the offer, he would have missed out on playing Magneto and fucking Gandalf. So without knowing, his options would have been two of the most iconic roles of the early 2000s, or a misogynist that even Anthony Hopkins couldn't make memorable. Dodged a bullet. Speaking of X-Men, Dougray Scott was the original casting for Wolverine, but due to an injury and the stretched out production on this film, Fox had to recast, which ultimately got Hugh Jackman in the role that's keeping his wallet full to this day. He should have followed in Ian McKellen's footsteps. I think that if Gandalf is doing it, then it's a good sign that you should too. So I guess he also should have been gay.
Bitch, please.
For the sake of time, I'll cut it there, but seriously, look up the trivia for this movie. It's absurd. Now the hair. It's undeniably Cruise-tastic, but it's a little much. I think he looks too good to be a covert operative, so it's going above the first one, but it's just too impractical. Like everything else he does in this movie, so I guess it makes sense. And Mission Impossible 2 gets a 5 out of 10, which is not bad, just very middle of the road. So I'm gonna address the 5'7" elephant in the room, since I'm gonna be talking about Tom Cruise a lot more. I think that Scientology is bad and dumb, but at the same time, I feel like he's the worst Scientologist known to man. I don't know the guy, and I'm not one to flock to the defense of a millionaire, but I don't know. He seems a lot less weird than he used to be. He's definitely not normal. So, Mission Impossible 3. I was under the belief that this movie wasn't very good, and I saw a lot of people online ranking this as one of, if not the lowest out of the whole series. And after rewatching it, are you guys okay? This is the first time where Ethan Hunt feels like a fully formed character, not just whatever version of a stereotypical spy guy they wanted him to be in the others. Though I think the romance is a hindrance in 2, I actually really like the one here. It adds more personal stake to every single thing that he does, whereas in the others he was kinda just doing shit because the script needed him to. I really like that the characters and the audience aren't supposed to give a damn about the MacGuffin this time, because we don't need to. The concept of him getting his wife back being more important than the overall stakes works better than guy has to get thing before other guy. I think J.J. Abrams brought a lot more humanity to the franchise that reshaped the storytelling and tone of the entire series. This is definitely the direction they decided to build off of in future installments, but I will say that I've never loved JJ's camera direction. I think he works really well with actors and in the edit, but the way his movies look kinda makes me upset. I don't like shaky or handheld shots when they're done too frequently, and I don't love lens flares. I just think all this feels too busy, and I know he's made armies of nerds upset, but even though I don't really love how some of them look, I actually really like a few of his movies, and this is one that I would include in that few. This is easily my favorite opening to any of the films in the original trilogy, which is purely based on my opinion. The movie starts in medias res, the middle of the movie. This structure is one that can either work really well or really badly. Why it works here is because it really does feel like the best way to show the audience that this is not like the other two. Ethan's story has to start with him being a chill married guy who's retired from field duty. And the villain works best when we learn how fucked the team is when they do. It helps to create a crescendo to what we're dreading will happen as the stakes rise, while still getting the franchise staple cold open. And this one definitely has the best performances for me so far. Cruise implements this expanded emotion into this super spy persona really well, and I think this is when I really start to like Ethan as a character. I think Michelle Monaghan as Julia is a great addition to the story, especially in the final act where she's actually proactive instead of just being a damsel in distress. And Philip Seymour Hoffman just steals the whole show, truly one of the best to ever do it, and I don't know what we did to deserve him playing a deranged sociopath, but the world is better for it.
My wife, girlfriend. So you know what I'm gonna do next? I'm gonna find her. Whoever she is, I'm gonna find her and I'm gonna hurt her. I'm gonna make her bleed and cry and call out your name.
Jesus Christ.
This movie also starts to implement some things that add a lot to the feel of these movies. Something that I feel like is misconstrued by some audiences is that Tom Cruise has an ego problem. And don't get me wrong, Nobody in this stratosphere of stardom operates with a small ego, but I always see him get lumped in with The Rock, who has that stupid rule in his contract where he can't really lose a fight, but Tom really lets Ethan Hunt get the absolute shit kicked out of him, and he isn't shy of being the receiving end of a joke. I mean, there's a whole car chase in Dead Reckoning that's an innuendo to erectile dysfunction.
You okay? Mm-hmm. Okay, look, I'm sorry. This is...
It's okay.
No, this car, the way they...
It's okay.
No, the way they set them up, sometimes it's just...
Let's go.
Takes me...
Let's go.
And here, he really goes through the ringer. Friends die in his arms, we see him have to actually do the math for his stunts, and he even has to die at one point.
You got knocked the fuck out!
They really bring back the stress-inducing qualities from the first film, and I think it really works. But even though I really like this movie, there are some holes in characters' logic that really annoy me. Why would Julia's brother give his sister's whereabouts to a complete stranger on the phone? Luther, the smartest character in the series, gives away Ethan's name to the main villain who just threatened to find his wife. Why would Benji risk his job for Ethan when they aren't even that great of friends yet? And as far as he knows, Ethan's rogue. This film also pulls a twist villain on us in the weirdest way. We're supposed to think that Lawrence Fishburne is the secret bad guy because he says shit like this.
You can look at me with those judgmental, incriminating eyes all you want, but I bullshit you not. I will bleed on the flag to make sure the stripes stay red.
But the twist villain is actually Billy Crudup, so why was Lawrence Fishburne talking so on the nose? It's also so obvious that it's not him, but at the same time, the sequences are really great. Philip Seymour Hoffman playing Tom Cruise playing Philip Seymour Hoffman is easily my favorite mask sequence in the series. Ethan Hunt having to escape the IMF who know exactly what he's gonna do is super fun, and the bridge sequence is really crazy when you realize that most of it was on a fake bridge. That's movie magic, baby. And even though the stunts are very much practical CG hybrids in this one, they're still really bold and hold up pretty well. The car yank and the Shanghai jump may not be as crazy as some of the stuff before or after, but I don't know. I still think it's pretty cool. Plus, we get introduced to Benji, my beloved, and this movie not only features one competently written female character, but two. But my theory on why Maggie Q didn't come back is because she managed to crash a Lamborghini going 3 miles an hour in the same franchise where the cast is doing shit like this, and I don't think they thought she could hang. Hair time. So if 2's hair was beautiful but thematically off, this one is okay but thematically relevant. That is exactly the hair of a man in his 40s who just now got married, so it works. Mission Impossible 3 is not perfect, but it's pretty neat. 7 out of 10. Just gonna get this out of the way, Luther is only in this at the very end. Ving Rhames still gets a 10, but Paramount? Thin ice. Ghost Protocol marks the biggest turning point for the franchise so far. Where Abrams pushed the series into the right direction, Brad Bird made sure it stayed on track. From this point on, these films actually start to feel like they're in the same franchise. It's, in a way, a soft reboot, hence why it's not called Mission Impossible 4, and I think it's for the best because from here they just keep getting better. For the most part. Brad Bird incorporates everything that worked best in each film from the original trilogy, namely the pensive espionage of De Palma, the over-the-top set pieces of Wu, and the grounded human elements of Abrams, all while creating a feel of his own. This is actually the first one I ever watched after being mesmerized by the trailer when I saw it on TV, and my dad took me to see this as my first ever movie in IMAX, and I was beyond hooked from just the opening prison sequence alone. The new lighter tone is felt from the very start, and it allows for the scripts to better incorporate tension and levity because the others feel like it was either all or nothing. Another thing that 3 was lacking was the goofiness. There's definitely still humor, but it feels like now they remember that these are movies with silly masks that somehow also change your body type and height without explanation. This movie opens up with the guy from Lost being the luckiest man to die in these movies. It should have been me, bro. I understand that killing someone right off the bat adds a bit more stake to the mission, but so far in these movies, you can tell when a character is going to die every single time. But I will say that I like the arc it sets up for Paula Patton's character. I think that she was actually a pretty cool inclusion to the team, but she didn't come back for any other movies. It's impressive how little these characters come back. But hey wait, Benji's back. This makes him only the third returning character in the 4 movies that have come out so far. You see, at this point, nobody was even sure if the movies or Tom Cruise could actually pull an audience anymore. Because of that, they brought on none other than Jeremy Renner from the Jeremy Renner app to potentially take over for Cruise as Agent Bran. But obviously, that didn't happen. I kind of feel bad for Renner. He was supposed to be the new Jason Bourne and the new Ethan Hunt, and it didn't work out for either for 2 completely different reasons. And he finally got his own Hawkeye project, but he's probably not going to play him anymore because Disney decided to lowball one of the OG Avengers for season 2 of his own show. But regardless, I actually really like him in these. More so in the next one, but with Paula Patton, I think this is a pretty solid team. It would be better with Luther, but it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. But I will say that Bran's backstory for this movie is kind of hilarious. So we're told that Julia died off screen after 3 while under Bran's protection, and he's harbored this unearthly guilt ever since. This is actually cool because it creates unspoken character tension that adds to the overall tensity of the mission. And though I think it works, at the end it's revealed that Ethan faked Julia's death because that was the safest thing to do for her to have a normal life again. So it's kind of funny that Ethan just lets this random guy carry that dread around. But that being said, I like that even though his wife is basically out of the story now, you can feel the impact from their relationship on Ethan. He's more empathetic and loosey with his friends and new allies. I also like that he's starting to lose his mind. It's not completely gone, but he is definitely on the brink of sanity. This is also where the stunts are absolutely the big draw for these things. The Burj Khalifa stunt had some of the best marketing I've ever seen for a sequence ever, and it paid off because it single-handedly rejuvenated the intrigue of these movies and Tom's career, because it's absolutely fucking crazy that he's doing this shit, man. Whoa. Now, I don't have much to complain about for this one, but I do think that the villain is definitely one of the weakest ones out of these, especially when he's sandwiched between Owen Davian and Solomon Lane in the next one. It just makes this very bland, I wanna blow up the world guy feel so uneventful. Like, obviously the nuke isn't going to go off, so it would have been nice if there was a personal stake in it. Hell, I think Lea Seydoux was a better villain here, and she's a secondary antagonist that gets lobbed out of the window pretty early on. But I do like that final parking garage scene. It's pretty cool, and I like that Ethan says this.
Mission accomplished!
And yeah, that's kind of all I have to say. It's, in a way, the textbook Mission Impossible movie to me. Does everything really well, but doesn't really do a whole lot narratively to elevate it like some of the future ones. The hair, though, some of the best. It's longer like in 2, but he was just in prison, so it makes sense thematically, and I think the hair actually adds to the stunts. Even the best CGI can't replicate that flow. And Ghost Protocol gets a 7.5 out of 10. It's kinda carried by the stunts and the gadgets. Okay, now it's getting serious. These next few movies are what make this franchise truly amazing to me. Even the ones I liked before, I don't know, they're not really mind-blowing to me. But what Christopher McQuarrie does with these movies is honestly magic. This is also where Ethan Hunt has completely snapped. In the others, he's either pushed to do the crazy stuff or he has time to prepare, but here, he's not even thinking about it.
I know this is gonna work. I know it's gonna work because it's impossible. But we're the only ones in the world that can pull this off.
There's a scene where he literally dies and has to be brought back to life, and the first thing he does is engage in a high-speed car chase that ends like this, mind you. And then immediately after, he decides, fuck it man, they're on motorcycles, might as well try that out too.
That's goddamn fucking right!
It's the sheer insanity that feels so good to watch because Tom, I'm gonna keep it $2 with you, brother. How are you still breathing? Oh, it doesn't really matter if he can breathe or not because he can also hold his breath for 6 minutes in this movie. Maybe Tom Cruise, the real man, snapped and not Ethan Hunt, the fictional character. But the rest of the movie is actually on par with the hubris of the stunts. The editing in this film is genuinely so slept on. My 2 personal favorite sequences in the entire franchise are in this one, the opera scene and the aforementioned motorcycle chase, McQuarrie's direction is so precise and fluid that it makes you forget that you're even watching a movie. The editing is also just so precise because with how much is happening at any given moment in the set pieces, you're still aware of exactly what is happening and where every single person is at all times. I don't even want to think about how hard it is to craft such elaborate scenes while keeping the continuity so smooth. It's truly amazing, and it's why I would call McQuarrie the best director for these movies. Another reason for that is he trades some of the goofiness for humor that can be genuinely funny.
Whoa. Are you okay to drive? I mean, a minute ago you were dead. What are you talking about?
I would say that I've had at least 2 genuine laughs from every MI film directed by McQuarrie. I also love that even though he's the only director to do multiple films, he really doesn't have a formula for these. He and Cruise do what is best for each individual film narratively, most of the time. For example, I love how this movie opens with the hugely marketed plane stunt, but ends pretty simple, just mind games and a foot chase. But that leads to my favorite ending in the entire franchise. The villain in this movie is easily up there with Damien, and this feels like the perfect way to wrap up the film. It wouldn't have been satisfying if he just got shot or ran over. The image of him banging on this glass box, seething with rage at his defeat, is way more impactful. I also think that this is my absolute favorite team lineup. It's undeniable that Ethan and Benji are a great field pairing, and I actually really like the pairing of Luther and Brandt while they're on the B plot to find the other two. I think it's a really great way to break up the insanity of the main plot, and again, they're really funny in this movie.
It's a high-speed chase. You just had to get the 4x4, didn't you?
Hey, don't blame me. You chose
You just had to have it.
You want me to drive? Do you want me to drive?
It's a shame that this is the last we'll see of Agent Brandt. This movie also introduces my favorite non-Ethan character to the franchise, Ilsa Faust, played by Rebecca Ferguson, who brings a certain something to the team. But being serious, Ilsa is like the perfect counterpart for Ethan Hunt. I like incorporating other super spies from other countries that are just as loco as the IMF. I think it expands the world while adding an interesting third party to the conflict. You never fully know where her loyalty or her mission lies, and it plays into the stakes really well. But though I do love this, I do have a few gripes. Nothing too major though. For one, I like the Syndicate, the titular rogue nation. The concept of a massive organization of missing or presumed dead operatives from across the world doing global terrorism is a great idea for an antagonistic force. My problem with it is that they never really feel like the anti-IMF that they're marketed as. I think it would have been cool to see a villain doing stuff just as crazy as Ethan to show how capable they are. I still like what we got, but I think it could have been a bit more utilized. The literal only other thing is that the Casablanca chase that, as I said, is one of my favorite sequences in these movies, ends really silly. Ilsa gets off the bike and stands in the road, which causes Ethan to crash and die. I get what they were doing, but not only does this shot just look a little goofy, but it's also kinda dumb. How did she get her bike to a complete stop so quickly after going over 100 miles per hour uphill? What if Ethan didn't stop in time and you both died? Or what if he died? You know he didn't have a helmet on. But when my two main issues with the movie are mainly just nitpicks, I don't really care that much when it comes to the bigger picture. The cinematography looks the best, it's edited so well, the story is fast-paced and engaging, all of the action and stunts are produced the best so far. It is in a way the most consistent MI movie that is still focused on the espionage, because they really don't feel like spy movies a lot of the time after this. And for me, personally, that's the biggest draw behind the stunts. Wait, what? What's that? Oh yeah, it's hair time, baby. Call me ludicrous because, spoiler alert, this is the #1 spot. The mid-length hair offers the most diverse look for Tom. A nice windswept look, a classy opera look, a chill vacationer look. It is truly the hair. And Rogue Nation gets a 9 out of 10. Now how on earth are they gonna live up to that?
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!
Fallout was the movie for me in 2018. After the last one, I was dying to see more, and I was more excited for this than anything else that year. And did it live up to my personal hype?
Woo! baby!
Where I would call Rogue Nation one of the best spy films of the 21st century, I would call Fallout one of the best action films. I love the decision to have a continuous story. It makes these movies feel even bigger before the stunts even start rolling. I also really like that they're at a point in this franchise where they can quickly recap anything that happened between movies because of how familiar we are with these characters now. It makes them flow into each other very nicely. We are reminded of Julia in the beginning through a dream sequence that quickly explains Ethan's motivations in this movie. His obligation to humanity personified by the future he gave up being quickly wiped out by the looming fear of annihilation is something that we know is in line with his character, and we don't need anything else. Just this quick, effective scene and we can go straight into the movie. I like that they're really quick to cut to the chase in these modern films. I also really like that this movie's plot is kickstarted by the team failing. If everything goes their way despite the odds, then we would feel programmed to expect everything to work out. I also love that this isn't a huge stunt that goes wrong or a convoluted set piece. It's another simple scene that further establishes Ethan's motivations and the themes of the movie without having to beat us over the head with them. Can one guy really save everybody in the world? I also love that they brought back Lane from the last one, again establishing tension in a very quick way. We already know what it means for the characters, and it helps the pacing to utilize a threat that the audience already understands. And the new characters introduced in this movie are also really cool. I don't want to kick the hornet's nest with this one, but to keep it brief, I don't love a lot of Henry Cavill's movies, but I can't call him a bad actor because I think he's really good in this. He somehow has more charisma as a character that we're supposed to hate than when he's playing the most likable character in comic book history. He's another one of my favorite villains in this series and honestly a highlight for me. I also really like the inclusion of Vanessa Kirby as the White Widow, the daughter of Max from the first movie. Like Ferguson, she expands the world, being a renowned arms dealer with ties to the big players in the world, adding to the criminal underground that we'll be delving into in this story. I do think that this movie hands down has the best pacing out of any of these. It's well over 2 hours, but it really doesn't feel like it. The fights are quick and dynamic, the chases are fast-paced and energetic, while being on par with the editing in the last movie, and the characters are given the perfect amount of time for meaningful interaction. This and Rogue Nation are all killer and no filler. I also love that, again, McQuarrie is the only director to return, and he still doesn't really reuse any tricks. The cinematography feels bigger and bolder. The color palette invokes colder tones while the last one felt warmer, and the story as a whole has a completely different flow, and I really appreciate it. But I will say that the big stunt in this one, though cool, may be my least favorite. Don't get me wrong, the Halo jump is awesome, but it looked better in the behind the scenes footage than it does in the movie because it's muddied by a lot of artificial weather. It still looks good, but the CGI does take me out of it. Where this movie really shines though is in its set pieces. The bathroom fight is visceral and so well choreographed that I think it's easily the best combat scene out of all of them. The helicopter scene's already thrilling on its own, but cutting between that and the fight between Ilsa and Lane all while Luther is defusing a bomb is honestly a feat. You'd think that it's way too much going on at once, but once again, the editing here is so masterful. No shot lingers for too long, and I feel like each thread is given the perfect amount of screen time. I also think that including Julia in the final act was a great idea. Incorporating this much of a personal stake adds another layer to the tension of the finale. I said the last one had my favorite ending, but this one takes the cake for having the best final act overall. And again, my only issues with this are really just nitpicks. I wish that they went a bit further with Ethan having to pretend to be a figure in the underground. I think it would have been really interesting with the theme that's established at the beginning. I wish we could have had a bit more time with Walker before the reveal that he's the secret bad guy. I would have liked it if at least some of or one of the team started to form a bond or friendship with him before realizing that they were being played. It's honestly not really a twist that the asshole that we've never met is the villain. It's also funny to think of how quickly all of this would have ended if Ethan didn't save his life earlier because Walker had to be a dumbass and wave his dick around just to pass out during the Halo jump. It makes me feel like he just got lucky the whole time. The person who comes closest to taking him out for most of the movie is himself. But again, really just nitpicks and looking too closely at each individual brushstroke. And the hair. This is kind of just the hair that Tom Cruise had in every movie around this time, but hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Plus, it works because this is the most consistently put together he has to present himself so far, so it ain't too shabby. And Mission Impossible Fallout gets another 9 out of 10. Chris, you shouldn't have. Okay, this is where things get tricky. Am I Dead Reckoning, formerly known as Dead Reckoning Part 1, is followed by Am I The Final Reckoning, formerly known as Dead Reckoning Part 2, so it's a little hard to talk about these as their own things because they're the only two movies that are completely hinged on being sequels. But since I'm not really going to go in depth on The Final Reckoning, because it's still in theaters and I also don't have any footage besides the trailers, I'm going to try my best to separate the two, but because of that, I don't really have as much to say about either. So Dead Reckoning, the third entry from the dynamic duo, is kind of a mess, but it's also still pretty good. Every main player has their characters completely down. The dynamic between each of them is so strong. I also really like the inclusion of Grace, played by Hayley Atwell, with a little asterisk next to her. With her, we get to learn more about the IMF and its agents. Each of them are actually former criminals that were given the choice to use their talents for good and gain their freedom, or go to jail, presumably forever. Fair enough. And I actually really like that concept. Obviously, Luther was a criminal in the first one, so it makes sense why that applies to him. And it actually adds a lot to Ethan. Now, this is a character that I don't need to know everything about, but knowing this explains why he's so quick to trust people like Ilsa or Naya in 2, and why he's so passionate about the job. It also sort of retroactively justifies a few things, like why there have been so many rogue agents, and why the government is so quick to distrust the team when it's assumed they've turned, and why some of them are not American. So this is a good little retcon. I also think that this has really good pacing. Each location and set piece flow into the next really well, as expected, and I like that they've incorporated characters that aren't from this spy world into the cast to react to the insanity that's going on. Obviously there's Grace, but besides her we have a team of CIA dudes tracking down the team, and they are way out of their element.
He's gotta be here somewhere.
I always like when there's another party involved in these stories. I think it adds a fun dimension to everything going on, and I think the villains here are pretty, interesting, to say the least. But I can't say good due to the next movie. But confined to this film, I really love the concept of the villain being a sentient AI that's taking over cyberspace. There's only so many rogue agents or guys with bombs that you can do before you run out of ideas, and I really like them taking this big of a swing at the very end. And at least in this one, the AI's enforcer Gabriel is, well, he's fine, I guess, I don't know. I really don't like that he's a guy from Ethan's past before the IMF because, again, I don't really care enough to know everything. I think it works better when it's vague. But the other gimmick is that he's supposed to be the evil Ethan Hunt. But we've done this twice already. One in one of the best ones, and one in the worst one. And he's not goofy fun like Dougray Scott, and he definitely doesn't have the presence of Solomon Lane, so he's just kinda nothing. But more on him later. But my favorite new character is Paris. Again, I like seeing lunatics from other countries in this world because I think it expands the concepts, and I really like that she's the closest thing to a Bond villain that these movies have ever come. A quiet French lady dressed up as a mime who's also a lunatic. It's pretty cool, I can't lie. And she also seems like more of a consistent physical threat than Gabriel, plus she also has an arc, which is kinda shoehorned in, but at least it's something, man. But everything else in this movie is kind of like a toned down version of the previous two, and I think that's definitely because it was part 1 of 2, which I don't really think was needed. I do still like that the mission in this movie is to get the key, and he does exactly that, which does add some satisfaction to the narrative, as well as a really strong third act, but the pacing for the first half of this movie can feel just a little wonky sometimes. Kind of like it was trying to get to the action as soon as possible, and that works in Fallout, but it's objectively done better in that movie because it builds on what was left off in Rogue Nation, and unlike the other two, there are things in this one that I genuinely don't like. The death of Ilsa is something that was in a way unavoidable. They avoided killing major characters off for way too long, and they don't even have enough other characters besides the main characters to kill, so honestly, somebody had to die on screen at some point. And honestly, if it was written better, I would have been okay with it being Ilsa, but she's killed by Gabriel, who I'm not even kidding, doesn't succeed in almost anything else in either movie he's in besides killing one of the most skilled characters besides Ethan. He couldn't even kill Paris on the train when he had an objectively better chance there. And to make it worse, they completely ignore her entire existence in the next movie. I genuinely don't remember them mentioning her at all. Maybe I'm just remembering it wrong. And that feels really disheartening when looking back on this film because she died just for Grace to end up serving the exact same role that she could have. But more on what I dislike here with the final reckoning because I can elaborate more there. But at the same time, this movie still kind of rocks. This may be the most likable Ethan is in these movies. He's consistently endearing, funny, and still really cool. I really love the Fiat chase and the train sequence, and I think the motorcycle jump looks a lot better visually than the Halo jump, even though it's kind of dumb that Ethan manages to crash into the exact spot that he needs to save Grace, completely on accident by the way. I also think that the secret MVP of this movie is Vanessa Kirby. I really like the role that she plays, being the neutral third party, and though she doesn't have a lot of play here, she eats up every line and moment she's given. But my favorite scene of hers is when she gets to pull a Philip Seymour Hoffman and play Vanessa Kirby playing Hayley Atwell playing Vanessa Kirby. But what's funniest about that is I think she plays Grace better than Hayley Atwell. Gotta love it, man. Now let's wrap this up so I can complain some more. The hair is the same as Fallout, treading no new ground I see, and Dead Reckoning gets a 7.5 out of 10. Alright, so, do the people who say that this is the worst one know what they're talking about?
They don't.
Yes, I have a lot of gripes with this movie. A lot. But I still think it's pretty good at times. For starters, I love that they decided not to kill Paris in the last one. Yeah, you can tell that they shoehorned her into this story and she doesn't really get much to do. But I don't know, man, she's cool. Also, Tremel Tillman, a national treasure. Somebody get this man a leading role fucking pronto. Everything underwater in this movie was fucking awesome. Cruise and McQuarrie are on record saying that they weren't super satisfied with the water stunt in Rogue Nation. And yeah, it's not the best, but I still think it looks amazing. But what they did here is better than any other sequence in the last one. And honestly, all of the stunts are some of the absolute craziest in the series. And I think that's pretty absurd. So because of that, I see this as a massive success for the franchise. It really is amazing that they've continued to top themselves even 8 movies in. But my problems are just as prevalent. So to further elaborate on what I was saying before, this movie made me dislike Gabriel and the choice to kill Ilsa even more. Gabriel does absolutely nothing in this movie, and I've convinced myself that he's probably the worst villain in the series. And if you disagree with me, I respect that. But before you call me dumb, remember how he exits the movie. He's also a very dumb character. In one scene, he says that he doesn't want to kill Ethan or his team because he wants them to live in the new world he creates, but then he proceeds to arm a fucking nuke and shoot at them. That's not letting them live. Also, he says that he has a getaway plane, and he even brought a spare. I'm sorry. Are you dumb? Do you know who you're talking to? Why would you even have a spare? He doesn't have a main henchman or anything. It's just a plane for a random guy. No shit Ethan's gonna hijack that plane. Also, everything he was set up to be in the last one was pointless. They don't even elaborate on his past with Ethan. He doesn't even work for the AI anymore. And Isai Morales gives a truly cartoonish performance that is honestly one of the worst in the franchise. And I've come to the conclusion that they should have just brought back Solomon Lane. He didn't die in Fallout, and we already know that he has beef with Ethan, so we don't need any forced backstory. If we saw him working for the AI, we would already understand the stakes. This guy's always been in charge, so for him to be following orders would make the AI seem even more threatening. And if he killed Ilsa instead of Gabriel, it would have been 100 times more impactful. At the end of Dead Reckoning, a point of conflict is that Ethan has to force himself not to kill Gabriel. But if it was Lane in the exact same role on top of everything else that we've actually seen him do, imagine how much more satisfying his defeat would have been for the audience. I do not like Gabriel. And the decision to kill Ilsa in the last one is made even more pointless because Grace doesn't do anything that Ilsa couldn't have done. The two already had a very vague romantic attraction in Rogue Nation and Fallout, and it honestly takes away from their friendship to just replace her with another British lady. I'm still going to avoid spoilers, but after Ethan gets out of the submarine, he needs to be put into a decompression chamber. If you've seen The Final Reckoning, I want you to seriously try to tell me that the following scene wouldn't have been better if it was Ilsa instead of Grace. And yeah, I know it sounds like I have more bad to say than good, but most of what I like was just the action or things that I don't really want to give away because it's still in theaters. There's things I like and dislike that I can't really get into, like the editing is horrible in the first half, but I can't really say why without being able to show you. Angela Bassett is really good here, but I think her scenes work better if you don't know about them going in. It's tricky, man, but just know that this is a great theater experience, and if you like these movies, even a little, then absolutely try to catch this on the biggest screen you can because it's pretty neat. And now the final Hair review. It's honestly, not great. He has this weird fringe that somehow makes him look older, and it honestly just looks goofy in some scenes. Maybe the last one was wise to not experiment. Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning gets a 6 out of 10. Absolutely not bad, but compared to the other McQuarrie films, it's just a little bit disappointing. Okay, now time for the final ranking. By hair. Number 8, Mission Impossible, makes him look like a child. Number 7, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, makes him look like a grandpa. Number 6, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, if Tom isn't playing it safe, then why should his hair? Number 5, okay, cool it with the music. It was funny at first, but goddamn. Number 5, Mission Impossible 3 tells more of a story than the new side characters do. Number 4, Mission Impossible Fallout, his cleanest. Number 3, Mission Impossible 2, it's too much, but it's too beautiful to ignore. Number 2, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, you can, in fact, reinvent the wheel. And number 1, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the most versatile look known to man. Okay, fine, I'll rank the movies. Number 8, Mission Impossible 2, Limp Bizkit carries. Number 7, Final Reckoning, too big for its britches. Number 6, Mission Impossible 3, needed a bit more goofs. Number 5, Ghost Protocol, the standard Mission Impossible movie. Number 4, Dead Reckoning, would be better if it was its own movie. Number 3, Mission Impossible 1, iconic for a reason. Number 2, Fallout, so close to being number 1, it's actually crazy. And number 1 is Rogue Nation. Everything I love about these movies in full gear. Now, your mission, should you choose to accept, is to tell me your ranking in the comments below. And I don't know, maybe press some other buttons while you're at it. Like the subscribe one. This message will now self-destruct in 5 seconds.
Next time on Cynical.
What's on the menu this evening, sir?